just share my screen, which I hope you can see. Can everyone see my slides now? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so welcome to this ExplORe session on open research. So this is just an introduction to open research as a concept and some of the services that we offer. I'm Susan Halfpenny. I'm Head of Research and Learning Information Services here at the University of Aberdeen. And as I've said, I've got a couple of colleagues on the call as well who will hopefully help with any questions at the end. So I'm just going to go over some of our services and that kind of thing. It will be a bit interactive, so I hope people are ready to do that on a Tuesday morning. So let's get started. So first off, I just wanted to start by introducing the Open Research team. So we do have an Open Research team. Sorry, there's just 6 people who are on our diagram then, but we've actually got a team of 7 who are the Open Research team. So we can offer a broad range of support from across the team. So we have support in terms of metrics, we have support in terms of open access publishing, we have support in terms of open data, and we also have Aberdeen University Press that's within the Open Research team. So what I just wanted to start this presentation with is, if you do have any questions following on from this, you start to do your research, as you go through that research life cycle, please do feel free to get in touch with the Open Research team who will be able to offer you that support. And they're all great, friendly people, so they are here to help. And we do want to hear the questions that you have and be able to enable you to make your research as open as possible. So our vision in library services and the Open Research team is to really embed open in everything that we do. We want to ensure you as authors get the credit that you deserve and that your work reaches the widest possible community. And we want to really become that pillar of sustainability in open publishing. So that's why we also have Aberdeen University Press within our open research services. We do this through advocacy, through partnership with other institutions and networks. We do it through providing you with an infrastructure to make your research open access and the support services that we offer. Oh, I'm going back instead of forward. The other thing that I wanted to put within here is a bit about our open research statement. So as an institution, we do have a commitment to open research. In Aberdeen 2040, our strategic plan, it is about being open to all. So that's really at the heart of what we want to do across our research and our education provision here at the university. But here within the Open Research team, which is managed from the library, as I've mentioned, we do have an open research statement, which I've got up on the screen. I'm not going to read all of this, but I have highlighted what open research means then. So what we're thinking about when we talk about open research is that it's making your research outputs open to everyone. So without any paywalls or barriers, so it's free for anyone with an internet connection to read your open publications. But we take that beyond the publications as well when we're talking about open research to think about also the research data that you produce as part of the research process. We think of that in terms of the methodology that you might have and being able to share that, and any software or code or other outputs that you might come as part of the research that you undertake. So it really is across the whole of that research cycle that we're thinking about openness. So we really want to think about that from that ideas generation, as I've mentioned, about from the data that you collect and being able to share that data to able reproducibility, the outputs that you create beyond the publication, whether it be, as I've mentioned, code or databases and that kind of thing. We really do want to ensure that the whole package is openly available to people without that kind of financial barrier to access and read that, so that it really does help with the reach of your research. So I've been talking quite a bit there about open research and some of the benefits, what we mean by open research. But I know that it's not always as easy as sort of just making that your outputs freely available. There may be a range of different reasons that you can't do that. So I thought, rather than me talk about what those barriers are, I thought as a group we can start to have a think about what some of those barriers to open research might be. So I'm just going to put in the chat a link, and what I've put together here is a Jamboard. So I'm just going to escape my presentation just now and just bring this up on the screen, so hopefully people now can see that Jamboard and have been able to access that from the link that we've got there. So what I want us to capture on here is any of those things that we think might prevent us from being able to make our research open or our research data open. So you can do this by, there's just a little button here and you can click on that and it'll bring up a sticky note. You can change the color if you want to, but if you just type on here and put something that might do that and click on save, we'll put it on there. So we've got a few here that we've got on cost. So that might be some of the things that come into play when we're thinking about open research. But I'm just going to leave that bit there so people can just pop a few things in terms of those considerations that we might need to overcome. Put these cost ones here. Just going to put something else up here while we're thinking about it. So I've popped something in there. Oh, we've got a whole raft of things that are coming up here. So yeah, these are quite interesting ones here in terms of that concern about that procedure of open access. So where might we publish open accessible? So are we still going to get that kind of academic level of peer review and that high impact journal? I can assure you that you can do. That's not going to be a problem, but it might come with a cost that we need to consider of that. But we've got a growing number of open access publishers which are starting to operate in more sustainable models. Another thing here we've got here is reuse of research that might go the wrong way. So yes, sort of those unintended uses of maybe your data or of your research that you can do that. But when we do publish openly, we are still saying that we want that credit, whether we apply an Creative Commons license, maybe something that the one which we usually say is Creative Commons CC BY, which means that you still will get credited, but anyone can kind of reuse that information. But if you've got some concerns, you can limit that it could be for non-commercial and that type of thing, or no derivatives. So you have to think about your funder policies when applying that kind of thing, but you can start to control the use of your outputs in that way. And follow through and that kind of thing. And if you did ever have some concerns about the reuse of your data, you can get in touch with the team and we can help to advise in terms of that. Yeah, privacy and concerns and sensitivity of data. Yeah, there might be some times that we can't share that. You know, we do want to be respectful of data protection legislation and the ethics when we're undertaking research. So there might be some reasons that we can't share that data, but we can think about how we can anonymize that data to maybe enable that reuse. So there may be ways that we can overcome some of these challenges. Don't know how to start. I think that's a really key point, and that's what we can do in the open research services. If you're really unsure about any of these concepts, you want to think about, right, I've got this particular situation, this is my research, I want to be able to publish the code, I want to be able to publish the data, and I want to be able to publish the article, and I want that all to be open. That's where you can get in touch with us and we can break that down into smaller chunks to make that into a workflow for you so that you can make your your data openly accessible as possible. So got some other things that are here in terms of that competitive research environment and the methods and the data. So yeah, I think it's sometimes we've got to think about when we share might be some of the things that we're picking up on this. So with that, I am just going to move on to the slides again to pick up on where we're getting with things. So I'm just going to this and then just not be able to work PowerPoint. Okay, so hopefully you can see my slides again there. And just bring you. Okay, so we've looked at some of the challenges that there might be with open research. Now let's have a look, let's have a bit more of a dig into that. So when we were looking at our Jamboard, cost came up quite a few times in there. I think it was one of the things that we captured the most in terms of one of those barriers to making our publications open to people. And I just wanted to have a think about this as a group. So I've got up on the screen here a bit of information about information has value. And this comes from the American College Research Libraries Association, and it's actually information literacy threshold concepts. And when the other side of my role, when I'm talking about information literacy, not open research, this is something that I talk to people about when we're talking about sort of searching and finding information. But I think it's really key when we're thinking about open research to bring in this idea of information having value. And this is a multi-dimensional value that we have to information. So this includes information as a commodity, as a means of education, as a means of influence and our understanding of the world. It also picks up this particular concept when we're thinking about information literacy skills, about the legal and social economic interests of this. So we know as researchers that information has value. We know as educators we've chosen to work within a higher education institute. We get that idea of information being valuable as that educational point. But one of the things that I want to think about is that value in terms of the economic value of information, because that is something that obviously, you know, it's big business in terms of academic publishing, in terms of broader publishing, and that might be something that we need to tackle when we're thinking about open research. And it can become a difficult concept for us to understand in an age where everything seems to be free, but actually there's a lot of economics that are underpinning those free models. So I thought we'd just have a little bit of a guess at the minute. So I've said that information has value. It has value for lots of reasons. And I think for us, it's that education and that understanding of the world, which is the key value of why we're thinking about information. But when we are thinking about open access, I think we also need to think about that income and that economic information, that information as commodity. So I was hoping just in the chat, I'm not going to go out into a Jamboard, if people could take a guess at what they think the UK's academic publishing income was last year. So I'm going to give you a bit of a thought on that. I am also just going to maybe give you a little bit of a tip of what that might be, that maybe thinking billions if we think about this. So is anyone brave enough to type an estimate within the chat there? Hoping one of my colleagues might maybe put something and don't know the answer. Or maybe they do know the answer. 10 million. So we've got quite a high one there. I'd say it's a little bit lower than that, but you know, that might be global. Sorry, I have put just UK here because that's where I could get a reliable figure, because I didn't want to give you any misinformation this morning. 4.5, we're getting a bit closer here with the guesstimates here. 3 billion, right, Okay, with that, we're getting very, very close there with those last two. So I'm just going to pick up on that. And this is actually what academic publishing income was in just the UK last year. So it was 3.5 billion that we had there. We had a higher guess. The overall publishing income for the UK was 6.9 billion. So this is making up a large chunk of the publishing income that we have. Other sectors within that are sort of kind of general interest, you know, education, and then there's education as well within that takes up a small point. So it's more the kind of commercial that does quite a lot in terms of that reading for pleasure, but it is academic publishing that makes up the majority of that income. So when we're thinking about open research, we obviously have to think about how we can make our research open in various ways. And that might mean paying to publish, but actually there has been a lot of changes recently that may mean that you can still publish, you can still make a record of your work openly accessible without having to pay by applying something like rights retention. And we'll be picking up on some of these concepts later on in the ExplORe series. So if you do need to follow up, and also you can follow up with colleagues in the open research team. But I do like to think when we're talking about that information, that academic publishing, that 3.5 billion, just the UK, that is underpinned by publicly funded research, so the research grants that you get and that kind of thing, and you as researchers, your intellectual property. So we are holding up that commercial publishing community. So I do really feel that we should get a way of being able to make that at least openly accessible so that we can address information inequalities and ensure that as many people as possible can read that really great research that you are creating, you are publishing, that new knowledge that can really help us as a society. So with that, I did want to pick up, it feels a bit doom and gloom at that point, saying, oh, it's costing all this money, but it doesn't mean that it has to be a barrier. We can overcome that. And I think it's really thinking about those motivations of why we want to make things openly accessible. So I've said about it addressing information inequalities, but here's a list of some other things that can help and why we might want to make things openly accessible, and why we might want to address some of those challenges to making things openly accessible. So by making things open, we make our work more visible. We do get to retain control of our work as well if we make it openly. So if we apply something like a rights retention statement to our work, that means that we still have a license to be able to share our work, rather than handing over that copyright and that reuse of our work to the publishers. So it gives us more freedom of how we can reuse our work, and then also how others can reuse our work. Making things open access means that they're available more quickly. You know, the publishing process can take some time, but if we're looking across the whole publishing life cycle, maybe we're looking at making things available as preprints, maybe we want to make our methodology available, maybe we want to make sure that our data is available and that kind of thing. We can make it available more quickly, which was really, really great in terms of when we were looking at the COVID virus and looking at the pandemic. Being able to make things openly available quickly enabled us to have a global response in a shorter time scale without those kind of barriers to being able to really work together to improve the situation and treat the virus in that particular case. Open access makes things more equitable. You know, we have to realise that we are in a state of privilege here at the University of Aberdeen. We have got subscriptions to some of these publications which are behind a paywall, but at a global scale that might not be the case. So we do want to make sure that we address those information inequalities between the global north and the global south to ensure that we can really improve our publishing landscape. And it can reduce costs. I've said about that cost to the income that the publishers are getting, but actually being able to publish in some of these ethical open access outlets and look at new models of open access publishing does mean that as a whole, we're reducing the costs. And actually, as a library sector, we are working and with publishers, with national groups to look at the costs of publication and to make sure that it looks to a more affordable model. So there is a lot going on in there to address that challenge of funding being a barrier to open research. So with that, we've dwelt on some of the challenges, but I don't want it all to be about that and how we might not be able to do this. So I thought it'd be useful to now just consider as a group some of the open research successes. So it might be drawing on some of the ideas and concepts that I've mentioned in terms of why we might do open research. So I'm going to flick back again to the Jamboard. So I'm just going to escape these slides and just go back over to that, so that just on the next page of this, which you can navigate to at the top of the screen, we've got another board here, and once again you can create a sticky note to think about what are some of the benefits of open research, maybe drawing on, as I mentioned, some of the things that I'd got on the slide previously, but maybe your own personal experiences or success stories that you might have read about that we can pop on here. So once again, it's just the link here. I'm hoping that we can get more successes than barriers. I will add something. So we've got something here in terms of bigger outreach. So yeah, it's in terms of if we make things available openly, it means anyone can access that with an internet connection. So that is really going to improve that visibility of the research. Yeah, that accessible knowledge, I think that's a really interesting concept as well. So it might be also about, okay, the access of our research publications, but we might think about accessible knowledge in various outputs that we might do. Maybe it's about providing a blog post that supports your research, that maybe makes that easier for a general audience to engage with. Maybe it's about making a YouTube video or tweeting about your research or using another social media platform. I'd put something in there in terms of it improves research integrity and reproducibility. And by that, I mean, if we start to share our data openly, that means there's more of an opportunity for people to reuse that data to ensure that, you know, that research was done with good intention. Great, we've got a load coming up here. So we've got transparency in methods. I think that links with that research integrity and also being able to build on that body of knowledge that we've got there. We've got impact and engagement. Yes, if everyone can read it, there's more of an audience, more people can use that. Oh, democratizing science, you know, that's a concept that I hadn't thought to put on there, and like that's new. But yeah, that ability to make this more openly available, enabling more people to engage with that. I think it's about therefore breaking down some of those ivory towers that we might have to ensure that everyone can understand the scientific process, and that can build trust within that again, because I know there's been sort of maybe some concerns in terms of trust in science. So actually by making this openly available, we can reach the general public and help build that confidence again. And I think that links with the kind of better access for the public as well. So we've got quite a few in there. Policy makers as well. I think that's useful in terms of the benefit to society and that kind of thing. So please feel free to add some more on there as we go on. But I feel happy that we've got at least the same amount of successes as we did in terms of barriers, if not more. So there is a lot in terms of this. It's definitely worth doing. It's definitely worth sort of dealing with some of the complexities that we might face to ensure that our research can be openly accessed by a broad community. So I'm just going to move back to slides again. And I've just got a small amount now to cover. So let's work this. So I mentioned at the beginning that a lot of this session was just going to be about exploring some of the concepts of open access, but also talking about the services and the support that we can provide to you here in Library Services. So open research services, the things that we can cover then is, and we focus probably maybe more so on the open access element today and research data, but we do provide services to help you in terms of if you want to make your publications openly accessible. So we can explain things in terms of funder policies, the read and publish deal. We also manage the block grant and we support with ref compliance and that kind of thing, and support on terms of using Pure to ensure that we've got a record of your research publication. So Joanna's on this call and is able to support in that area and unpick all those various funder policies, which I know are constantly evolving. So, you know, if you're unsure about what you need to do with your research outputs and you were funded, please do get in touch with us and we can support and look into that for you. We also have a research metrics service as well. So this is looking at things like ethical metrics, looking at the citation data that you might have for your research, and really being able to assess where the collaborations are and the research partnerships may be, where your research sits in that broader body of research for your subject. So Francesca is able to support with that kind of area and produces reports for schools, but can work with individuals as well in terms of what their interests might be and what we might glean from some of that publication data. We also have research data services, and we work really closely with Digital Research, who are also in the Directorate for Digital and Information Services. So that's where we can look at research data management, but also how we can make your research available in various repositories, applying the FAIR principles, and it's Leslie who will be able to support with that. And we're also interested in how we can develop our services. I've mentioned Aberdeen University Press, where we want to be a sustainable open access publisher, where we do not charge for publishing or reading. So this is a diamond model publisher, but we're also interested in working in partnership with anyone in the research community so that we can develop our services and provide support to you that is really relevant and meets your research needs. We are part of the broader Digital and Information Services Directorate, so we do have close links with IT services. I did mention Digital Research. They take a lead on data management plans and your data storage. They've got safe haven and high performance computing, so if you need those to undertake your research, please get in touch with the Digital Research team or get in touch with Open Research, and we can make sure that we put you in contact with the right people within the Digital Directorate. We do provide further service in terms of information literacy. I've talked a little bit today about the information literacy concepts and information having value, but there's various areas of that we can provide support on. And we do provide support with copyright and licensing, both from Open Research and our broader copyright service within the library. So that's what we're currently doing. We are always interested in hearing about what you would like to see from our service. So I'm not going to go to the Jamboard today, but actually on the final page of the Jamboard, if people have time to fill that in afterwards, we're really interested in hearing about what support you could do. So I've covered some of that today, but if there are other things that you think, I'd really like some help with this, obviously, if it's an individual query, do contact us at openresearch@abdn.ac.uk. But if there's just a general idea about how we can shape our services, do pop something in the Jamboard, because we're happy to consider things and look at how we can build and grow and co-create our services so they really meet the needs of researchers at Aberdeen. So that brings me to a close, near enough, of this session. I did want to flag this is the first in a series of ExplORe sessions. This has been very much the high-level introduction to our open research services and open research as a concept, but we have a whole range of things coming up over the next few weeks, which will drill down into some of these ideas a bit more. So if you're interested in finding out about those open publisher agreements, rights retention that I've mentioned today, some of that research integrity that we've touched on, some of the insights and the metrics, please do come along to some of the follow-on sessions where we will be looking at those ideas in more detail with how you can apply that to your own open research approaches. So with that, that brings me to the end of the presentation this morning. Thank you for listening, and we will try and make this recording available. I am going to, at this point, stop recording.